I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would you please call the roll?
Mayor Jorgensen.
Present.
Commissioner Wygand. Commissioner Kaler.
Present.
Commissioner Crowley. Commissioner Skidmore.
Present.
Okay, we do have 3 here, and that is a quorum. I'd like to welcome everybody that's attending this evening. The day is Wednesday, September 4th, 2019. The time is 7 o'clock, and it's time for our regularly scheduled City Commission meeting. I'd like to welcome those that are in the gallery and also that are tuning in on KOFO or their electronic devices. We'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation led by Reverend Craig Robertson from the First Christian Church. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I pray, I wanted to invite all of you, anybody who's interested, we're celebrating 150 years at Ottawa First Christian Church Disciples of Christ, 27th, 28th, and 29th. If you want a free meal, we have a free meal on Friday, on the 27th. So we invite you to come. Let us know. Let us pray. Gracious and loving Lord, we pray that you bless us and guide us as we do the work of this city. We pray that you be with the commissioners as they listen, as they decide what is important for the whole, not just for always the few. We pray that you bless us and guide us as we do your work and will. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Craig. That moves us on to our consent agenda, items 6 and 7, which include the minutes from the July 15th study session, the July 17th regular meeting, and the July 22nd study session.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner,
I move that we approve the consent agenda as listed.
is there a second?
And I will second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That moves us on to our regular agenda. Item 8, public comments. Do we have anyone registered this evening?
No one's registered.
Okay. That I'll dispense with the paragraph there and move on to item 9, declaration. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners. City Manager?
Excuse me, Commissioners. Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Wygand is on his way.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication that they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Nope? Okay. We're zipping right along now to item 10.
Request for approval of ordinance granting a conditional use permit at 113 West 4th Street. A protest petition has been filed on this planning commission action.
Since we do need to have 4 to act on this, what's the feeling? Should we wait until Commissioner Wygand gets here, or should we proceed as a schedule?
Fine if we can wait.
Advice?
Mr. Mayor, you are free to proceed. I don't know how many people have registered to speak to this issue tonight. You can certainly begin taking for want of a better term, testimony from the applicant. I think staff has a memo that was circulated to you about the procedure to be followed. You can also stand at ease if you want to for 5 or 10 minutes and give Commissioner Wygand a chance to arrive. Really, the choice is yours, but I think it might inquire of the city clerk as to how many people have signed up to speak to the issue.
I believe we had 1 for sure.
I think we have
2? Okay.
4 or 5.
4 or 5. Okay. I think I would entertain a motion to go into recess for a 5-minute period.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to go into recess for 5 minutes. Is there any discussion? If not, let's proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are in recess until 7:10. Per my watch.
Close enough.
With your watch.
Great.
Call the meeting back to order. Let's read item 10 again.
A request for approval of ordinance granting a conditional use permit at 113 West 4th Street. A protest petition has been filed on this Planning Commission action.
Under comments, Rick Dietz with the Old City Hall LLC is seeking approval of a conditional use permit to allow 2 residential living units on the property. This is allowed in the C4 district as a conditional use by zoning regulations. The Planning Commission has reviewed and recommends approval by a vote of 6-0. And I'll let the city attorney advise us on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a conditional use application. Under the law, it's treated like a rezoning application in terms of procedure. The Planning Commission has recommended approval to you by a vote of 6-0. You have 3 options whenever you get a rezoning or an amendment to the zoning map application. That is, you can uphold what the Planning Commission did and approve it by ordinance. You can reject and overrule the Planning Commission by a 2/3 vote, or you can refer it back to the Planning Commission for further study or clarification of any points that you felt were not adequately addressed. This also carries with it a valid protest petition which was filed, and that has to be signed by property owners owning 20% of the property in an area around the subject property. In this case, we did receive what we believe was a valid protest petition. That would require that if you want to uphold the Planning Commission's action, it must be done by a 3/4 vote of all members of the governing body. Your governing body, even with 1 member absent, is still a 5-member commission, and 3/4 of that would require that all 4 of you tonight vote in the affirmative if you want to adopt the Planning Commission's recommendation and approve the conditional use permit for the property. My recommendation to you tonight would be that you have a staff presentation by the Community Development Department. They have a memo, I think, that's attached to this agenda, and they can go through that and recap for you the highlights of the Planning Commission's action. I would allow any questions that you or the Commission have, Mr. Mayor, could be asked at that point. Then a presentation from the proponent, the applicant, for the conditional use permit, and then those who are opposed or have questions about the permit, the application, could go next. And then a short rebuttal period if you feel it necessary and the applicant desires to do so, since they have the burden tonight of convincing you that you should vote to approve over the protest petition.
Okay. All right, thank you. At this time, I would ask staff to give a presentation of what we're looking at this evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. So I just have a short PowerPoint about the proposal. This is similar to what we did with the Planning Commission and felt like it would be appropriate tonight to do that. So this is generally where we're talking about, near the intersection of 4th and Walnut. It's really the alley, abuts the alley between Main and Walnut. Here's a closer up view. The property is right here, outlined in yellow. The property owner also owns this property that is around it, and there may be some comments about that as well as we go along. This is what it looks like kind of from the street view, although currently, because the preschool was there and has left, some of the things in the yard are no longer there, but that's the building itself. This is the interior drawing that was submitted by the applicant to put 2 one-bedroom units out of this facility. Within the city's zoning ordinance, we have always allowed that as long as 51% of the first floor was retail, service, office, anything else on a commercial nature, you could have residents above, below, or the balance of that first level. In this case, there is a basement, but it's not proposed to be occupied. So these are 2 one-bedroom units. One of these areas, because of the preschool, actually has really the makings of restroom and kitchen now. This is, again, the kind of something that we put in. We did this after the hearing when we understood that there were questions and concerns about the parking. And the applicant had testified that there, on this outside parcel, that there were 6 private spaces here. There's a long garage here. It has a double set of doors along the alley, as well as here, so 4 pulling in straight, although the applicant indicated that you could actually get an additional car in there. What we didn't count in that is that beyond the garage doors, there's actually room for 2 cars. Sometimes there are cars parked there, and parallel. The application itself is really for this parcel, and there is a exit right in between these two, but there is room right up against the building here and here for 2 cars. If you had a small car, you could probably even make another car here if you had something and you needed to, or if you were dropping off. But we didn't really count those as parking because it's not that convenient. So we wanted to show you that. We've presented to you in study session twice on this, or well, once, I'm sorry, on this. Sarah did, to tell you what the recommendations through the original action as far as the findings. And as you know, we do that so that you would have a full, clear case, and all of that was presented as well the night of the hearing. But I'm happy to answer any of those questions. We had quite a conversation with a couple property owners who attended the public hearing, and they had comments about the alley, about signage, about parking in the general area, some observations from 3rd to 4th, and some comments about proposed units to be located over at 4th and Main, about half a block away. But the Planning Commission, upon conclusion that they had successfully provided the number of spaces required through the conditional use process, recommended this to you. Staff's feedback relative to the parking really was that when the building was used for offices, both sets of buildings, there was quite a few more people in there and quite a bit more parking. There, at that time, the public parking lot that's on Walnut across the way where originally was a fire station, that parking lot was oftentimes full, but because these 2 buildings haven't been fully, I guess, office retail kinds of uses, it's been pretty available. And then that when this building was a preschool, the employees and the patrons would have resulted in quite a bit more parking than the proposed 2 units from our staff perspective. Subsequently, then, the Planning Commission made this recommendation. But I can go through any of the findings if you'd like. We have approved to date at least 2 other applications similar to this. We have 2 more pending, but in completely different parts of our downtown. It has been several decades that we have encouraged, even by the Planning Commission or the City Commission's direction, to waive fees to promote housing downtown as a way to create a very vibrant, active space. It is a mix of uses, as you know. We have industrial uses, light industrial uses. We have office, retail, service, retail sale of service, as well as housing on every level, lower, first floor, behind businesses, as well as upper. And so that we wanted to at least make sure when we're discussing the mix that it changes on an ongoing basis. Because restaurants add certain kinds of pressure. The movie theater has its own kind of needs, and that in any given block, things have changed, at least in my tenure, because I was originally hired and worked in the old City Hall. So this block at the time, we had a number of different things going on even then.
Wendy, that block in the 300 block, that's bound by 3rd and 4th Street and Main and Walnut. Is that entire block zoned as a C4 district?
Yes.
Okay. And then across the street on Walnut, is that an R2 or R3?
Off the top of my head, it's probably an R2.
Okay.
I know it's not an R3.
Okay.
And I think further as we go south, there's even some that's R1. But I believe that's an R2 at least.
Okay.
And it could have even had, at one time, even that block would have been C4.
Okay.
Okay, so that's why we have some of the multifamily that we do have in there. And those are old original, of course, a number of them were housing structures, but part of the reason those have that many units is simply because under the C4 that would have been permitted.
And Wendy, you brought, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was asking for questions.
You brought up a good point. I was going to ask that too. Do you know how many employees the daycare had and what their hours of operation were?
I only ever met with the two women who were there. I wish Sarah, she could have answered that for you because she actually used that daycare. But I think it was 2 to 3 depending on season and number of kiddos that were being cared for there.
Okay, and so where do they park typically, do you know? Or
The
they-
employees?
Yeah, the
I
employees.
believe behind.
Behind where this, we're talking, okay.
Mhm.
Good. Additional questions?
I'm
for
sure
Lynn?
that let me say, there was parking provided for behind, but just like we have found over the years, it's not uncommon for people to park on the street until they're asked to
Yeah.
comply with the 2-hour rule.
You know, I've always long been an advocate of people living downtown, and I look favorably upon this project, but I go back to former City Hall, and that is, I go clear back to when that building was a youth center, and the parking was at a premium in those days also.
Sure.
And actually, this would actually be less parking than had been in previous years, perhaps. And looking at that property, since we heard that there was an objection and a concern about parking, I don't find that personally to be the case for that many people that will be living there in that building. I like the idea that people are building spaces for a more dense population in the downtown area, and that parking is sometimes a good problem. There's parking spaces within blocks of that, and so I don't have that concern.
My observation would be that the police chief, the public works director, and I, every year, we field questions and concerns about parking downtown. We will continue to do that. We looked at even around Legacy Square. We've had this concern. We're adding parking by the development of that project, actually, to our downtown. And we have to look on a regular basis at where's the 2-hour, where's the 8-hour, where's whatever. And I think that, and I know that the city manager and I have had conversations about, as you progress south, what has happened, and what do we need? Are there places that we could restore parking on Main Street? Because maybe there's a curb cut somewhere that maybe that curb cut isn't used anymore. I remember years ago where, kind of near to the gun shop, there was, when that was a car dealership, there was an ability to pull through to get your cars worked on. Well, that curb, for example, has been restored. But those kinds of things do have to have a regular look because things change. And there have been some other places that maybe we still have that opportunity to add back, and we need to continue to look for it because that is important. But we also have spent a great deal of effort in my last 10 years working on Play City and Let's Move and things in order to get people active. So we also have to try and encourage people to use all modes of transportation at whatever we can. So certainly this will be a continuing discussion regardless of what decision you arrive at tonight. I wouldn't want anyone to go away thinking that we would brush any comments about parking aside because, like I said, at least once or twice a year, the three of us have a good conversation to talk about a specific area or another where maybe we're observing things, or maybe there's some conflict happening, either accidents or parking too close to fire hydrants. I mean, any of those things can warrant a call to looking at it. In fact, we looked around the courthouse just recently to see if there were some stripes there that could be modified to add some additional parking. So.
You know, as the apartments develop in the downtown area, like second floor spaces, whether it's over Sears or wherever it is, are those going to have requirements for parking?
Actually, the only housing that has requirements is when you do something similar to what the applicant proposed, which is use 100% of the first floor. That's the only time in which a parking requirement is actually even required, because the entire C4 district, that one of the benefits to that area is that you don't have to provide your own parking. You don't have to provide your own snow removal. That is the burden of the community at large. And that is why we own a number of parking lots downtown and do the maintenance, the striping, the snow clearance on them. And so that is the benefit. There are benefits and costs for being downtown, and one of those options is about the parking.
All right. Thank you, Wendy. I think let's move in the order that we have here. We have the staff presentation questions. We're now going to give a chance for the applicant to speak on behalf of the project, and then give those opposed to the project to speak as well, and then rebuttal. And then at that time, we will have a chance to discuss this this item further. So, Mr. Dietz, would you like to come forward and, for the record, state your name and address, and tell us about your project?
Richard Dietz.
Sorry, Dr. Dietz.
No, that's fine. Richard Dietz. Address of the property is 113 West 4th Street. So briefly, a small clarification. The current zoning on the property is C4. C4 allows, as mentioned, for one half of the ground floor to be residential with no requirement of off-street parking currently. And you can have up to 4 unrelated occupants inhabiting that and be within compliance as it's currently zoned. The north section of 113 West 4th Street currently meets zoning for residential, the same as every other downtown building in the C4 district. No CUP required, no permission needed, just the usual renovation process, drawings, permits, meeting fire code, making sure the buildings are safe, having the proper inspections, etc. If it stays C4 without the conditional use permit, the south portion is already zoned to be retail and office space. Obeying all fire codes and occupancy limits, there are no off-street parking requirements at all, period. None for that structure. It recently was a daycare facility, as mentioned, daily employees, depending on what, as the daycare grew and they changed their mix of age groups, there were between 3 and 4 employees daily there. There's up to 35 children being used. That was their maximum capacity, and they outgrew that. Wonderful business, good for them. But there was a noticeable traffic and parking effect to 35 kids getting dropped off and picked up. A good effect. I mean, we always have those kind of problems. 2 weeks ago, for example, we showed a business that's wanting to relocate 7 to 10 employees and daily customers. Showed them a South Ottawa location that would fit nicely into that space. With the current regular C4 zoning, there is no off-street parking required, and it automatically would qualify for that business. No special permit, no special permission. And as mentioned already, there are a series of issues that have to be considered and reported on for every CUP requested. And our request has had the scrutiny of the city, has been vetted by the Planning Commission, and received approval from both the city and a unanimous vote of the recommendation from the Planning Commission. So tonight, the City Commission is voting on the CUP to allow us to use the south portion of the building for residential use in addition to the north. And with that comes an off-street parking requirement of 1 parking space per unit, which we can clearly show we have met, or we can meet. So once again, in summary, our CUP request is for using the south half as an open floor plan, mobility challenged, accessible, single apartment. This use meets all the downtown city requirements, has the approval of the Planning Commission, and I suggest it would actually be the lowest parking impact option that we have. We try to be good neighbors, and we've been sensitized, obviously, to parking, and we appreciate everybody's input, and we try to listen politely. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Before you go, do we have any questions for Dr. Dietz?
Yeah, I would, just a quick question here. So if there were 2 units and they're each 1 bedroom, I'm assuming the most you would typically have would be 4 cars in this as an estimate, right?
Correct.
And you've provided here, there's 4 to 5 inside the garage plus 2 behind, so we're talking about 6 to 7 spaces available for parking cars? Is that
Correct.
my understanding on that? Okay.
Yeah, now that we're the owner of all the 2 adjacent properties, we can lay out parking for whichever building and however we can.
Is both properties owned by the same entity?
Yes.
Okay.
And as far as the bed and breakfast then, what's the maximum capacity will you have there for cars, would you guess? I mean, if it was full on one night, you'd have X number of cars?
As per the state grant that we got when we renovated the building, the 4 ground level units are single bedroom,
Okay,
and the south half of the main floor, or the second story, is a combined unit, and it's 4-bedroom and 3-bath.
okay. So the 6 spaces you have, typically they're just north of your bed and breakfast, appear to be sufficient for that location. I'm just trying to keep thinking, we don't want to overcrowd this with so many cars here, but okay, I understand what you're saying.
And that building, again, that building's zone C4, and we're meeting all those requirements, so we don't technically have any requirement for
That's
off-street
right, gotta be
parking
on
for
the
that
street.
entire complex.
That's right.
We're
I
just
get it.
providing that as, as a service. And the map that was drawn is fairly conservative. The architect that was doing the work for us said that they could fit in several more spots, again, because when you have all the adjacent properties, we can determine flow through that area. We can make it one-way either direction, and by making it one-way either direction, we may pick up a couple more spots.
That's good, yep. Okay.
Further questions for Dr. Dietz? Okay, thank you.
You bet.
At this time, I would give a chance for those opposed to address this item. Do we have the list?
Only, only 2 of them signed. They normally don't have to actually sign in unless it's under the public comments section.
Gotcha, okay. Who would like to speak first? Okay. Rod, for the record, could you state your name and address?
Rod Croucher, own 324 South Main in Ottawa. I'm really not against the project. I think I just have an accumulating concern. I have 4 parking places, which most offices downtown have 4 places to park behind the buildings. I have 6 employees. I know one person downtown has 7 employees. Almost the majority of the blocks downtown have parking across the alley from all the businesses, except mine. We have no parking lot. And the map she was showing earlier, it showed this business and then a house with apartment buildings, but the house is no longer there. It's just a bare lot. My concern is with other projects that are going to take maybe 30 to 40 parking places that other people are parking now, aren't going to be able to park at. And I know Rick, nice guy, he's letting people park now in his area there that aren't supposed to park there. My concern is, when that's all done, where is the parking going to be for the downtown or the downtown business owners' employees to park? And I've got a 70-year-old woman now that walks from Walnut and without trespassing has to go all the way down to 4th, down and back in to go to work. I mean, that's a nice parking lot on Walnut, but it's not really that accessible for the businesses downtown. And like I said, it's just my concern. I don't know if they could redo parking on Walnut Street with the bike path in a little different spot, because that concerns me. I seen 2 little kids, 10 years old, in the center of the street drawn with chalk. And it scares me to death with cars coming both ways, and it's a bicycle path. And I see numerous people pushing children in strollers down that path with cars coming both directions past them. And like I said, I don't know if there could be more parking on Walnut, or some other way to find more parking for the business owners who actually pays the taxes downtown Ottawa for them to, the employees to park at. And like I say, I'm not against the project. I think it's fantastic. I think we've got 4 or 5 apartments in our block alone. And I really need 8 parking places behind my place, but I only have 4. And I wish more people would put apartments downtown, because I think it's fantastic that there's people that want to live downtown Ottawa where they don't have to mow grass, don't have to shovel snow. It's all done by the business owner below. So like I say, that's the only concern that I have on the project. It's really not against the project.
Good. All right, thank you, Rod. Do we have others that would like to speak? Yes, sir. For the record, could you state your name and address, please?
Sure. My name is Gary Brand. I am one of the people that moved downtown. I've lived at 322 and a half for the last 16 to 18 years. Forgive me, I don't know exactly as I stand before you. But I'm impacted by the same phenomenon. And I, like Rod, have to say, it's not that I'm opposed to Mr. Dietz's idea, but it was made further problematic in my mind when I discovered that the old city admin building that he bought, which I had toured with some investor folks, our understanding was it could be divided into 6 units, and now I understand there's 10. And you take 10 and you add 2 more, you've got 12. And with all due respect, I wish we still had that map up, but I don't, for the life of me, and I invited the planning commission folks to go take a drive through it before they rendered their final judgment that Wednesday night 2 weeks ago, because that garage is a beauty, and you can put two roll-up doors to come off of the alley. Then there are two on the west half of that garage, and if you can figure out how you can get 4, not to mention 5 in it, by putting cars where they show these two to be to the north of the proposed 2 apartments in the old daycare, then you drive a smaller car than I do, and you're excellent, because they face the daycare. You can't put those cars there. You can't add another one laterally, because the reason those 2 spaces have a big space between them is there is the wood staircase that makes it handicap approved and all that. I don't for the life of me see how you can get 12. But that really isn't even the issue, because my concern is parking in general. As we see half of that city lot go away, as I understand it, and as we have metered parking across the street on Walnut, you have 3 multi-use residences there fighting for 1/2 of the old 2-sided parking at Walnut, plus another residence, all within the sphere. I don't have enough for the attorneys downstairs at my place, because I own the whole building. We have a problem with parking, and what honestly got my jets going at the planning commission meeting was the assertion that we don't have a parking problem in Ottawa. We do, and it's going to get worse when we add 50 net new people. I'm all for living downtown. I do. I've got Trundle's old place. It's gorgeous. But I've passed on some others that came available, and I understand the city's trying to make upstairs its residence. But how do I spend the money to refurb that and sell a residence to somebody that has no parking? Nobody's real keen on walking a block or more to a city lot. I would suggest, as I did in the planning commission, park your car a block from your house for 6 months, rain or shine, and walk home and tell me how that makes your life experience better. And the comment in the planning commission meeting was a very flip, well, that's what the price you pay for living downtown. That may be true in Chicago or New York. It shouldn't be true in Ottawa. We need more parking. I think that Rod Croucher was speaking to that issue. Maybe part of the solution is to look at what we did when we took away 5 blocks of parallel parking on Walnut. It certainly cost me money, because I own the corner of 3rd and Walnut and have multi-use there, and my occupancy percentage has gone down and my rents have gone down because their parking evaporated. It is a problem, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. I made the comment right now, I love this place. I love this town. But the one thing I can tell anybody is car show night or parade nights, I leave, because I get tired of fighting people for the 2 spaces that I own right under my deck. And that's only indicative of a shortage of places to park, especially when Main Street is tied off. So the bigger issue is we don't have enough parking. And it isn't encouraging businesses to occupy the first floor. Maybe we should convert the whole downtown area to residential. That might solve the problem. And then all the parking on Main becomes by assignment with the property. I don't know the answer. What I know is I got a notice that I'm now going to have 50 new neighbors within 200 feet of my parking lot, my private driveway. What are you going to do if 12 cars don't cover that area? Yes, there's 2-hour parking up front. Yes, they can go get a permit. Well, that went away. The people on the other side of Walnut are already fighting increased demand for the parallel on their side because we all lost ours on the east side. These are real problems. We need some serious consideration for the bigger picture and how we're going to address this, because contrary to what everybody else says, I don't know how anybody can say we don't have a parking problem. I own more businesses and have renovated more of these apartments in this beautiful historic district, already. If I didn't have a conundrum on, I don't know how to sell somebody a really nice place to live with absolutely no opportunity to tell them where in the hell they can park within rain or shine distance. And that's where we are. The other point I wanted to make is increased traffic on that alley between 4th and 3rd is going to be a problem very soon. I invite you tonight on your way home, take a drive down that alley. It is riddled with potholes, some of them a yard or more around. The deepest is 8 inches. It's a real problem. My understanding from the city is can't do anything about that till we get all of the potholes fixed on the city streets. Well, putting 12 more cars traffic on my alley is not going to make life better for any of us. And that's the thing. So, in and of the project itself, Dietz is a great guy. I'm surprised he's putting 10 units in that old city building, but 12 on the corner, and my heart starts to race because I can see the 2-hour parking in front of his city place disappearing by people that go down and buy the permit and can park there unlimited amounts all year long. And I have yet to rent any of my apartments to a group of renters who strictly only have 1 car each. It just isn't going to happen. I think that's pretty much the whole nut. And like Croucher, I concur. Part of the solution might be if we can figure out a way. I would draw your attention, if you haven't seen it, Lawrence has over a dozen miles of laneage where they left the parallel parking in place and simply put a 2.5 wide bicycle path to the outside. Is that a perfect solution? No. Is it more safe than kids and baby carriages and even bicyclists going right down the middle of the street with cars passing on either side? It is. Twice since we made that change, I have come within a whisker of hitting a kid in his teenage years because one of them in the dark, and I came so close it scared me to death because it's pitch black. He has no reflectors on his bicycle, and he didn't so much as quiver at the stop sign. And I missed him by inches. It's just not a good thing. So, we need more parking, and you are fixing to make the corner of 4th and Main a real problem. It's been a problem for a while, but it's going to be really bad the more stuff we shoehorn into it if we don't make some concessions close on parking, up to and including Rod's 78-year-old employee walking a block and a half every day, rain or shine.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brand.
Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers this evening? Any other speakers in opposition this evening? Okay. At this time, I would like to give Dr. Dietz a chance to review anything that was said this evening. Nothing. Okay. And I will open it for discussion among the commissioners.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, just want to clarify for you one more time, based on the protest petition and the state statute, you need 4 votes to approve the application, you need 4 votes to reject the application, and 3 votes to send it back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration. And it's always a good idea to specify if there's grounds that you want them to look at or things in their findings. So 4 to approve, 4 to reject, 3 to send back.
Okay. And I guess at this time, do we have any discussion on this item?
Well, I'll just say, it sounds like we've kind of got 2 different issues here. We've got Mr. Dietz's application, then we have a parking issue to deal with, and maybe a third one with the alley that needs some maintenance. I did drive down that alley yesterday, and I concur, it needs some work. We need to get on that, and I think they're right, that there's some potholes there that, can be dangerous, so that needs to be addressed. I think one thing, too, to keep in mind, everyone, would be that the daycare had their cars there during the day, and I'm thinking most of these businesses we're talking about here with the new duplex would be mostly parking at night, so they would be complementary to each other versus what it used to be. I don't know if that'll make a difference or not, too. We'll kind of wait and see where that may develop. But I appreciate your concerns about the parking, and Rod, your employee, too, walking that distance. I appreciate that. I understand what you're saying.
Any other discussion, or do I hear a motion?
I think I want to concur with what Commissioner Skidmore was saying. I'm hearing, and we even heard it in the petition by some individual citizens, and I heard it from at least one business owner that there were concerns about the alley. We are not talking about the alley. We're talking about 113 West 4th. Mr. Dietz doesn't have anything to do with the alley. That's our responsibility. And yeah, I agree. It's in horrible condition. If we wouldn't have gotten so much rain, I'm guessing that we probably would have taken care of that by now. It's not been an ideal year for public works, and so it's not malicious that we're not getting on it. We promise. But yeah, we do need to deal with our alley. But tonight we need to deal with 113 West 4th.
And I agree. The alleys are in dire shape across the city because we've been patching 4,000 potholes, I think was the last count, throughout the city, and with more to go. And the streets are receiving priority at this time.
I have one more question, or I have one question, and that would be for Mrs. Lee. Mrs. Lee, this is a Planning Commission, or I'm sorry, this is a request to have a conditional use. So for the general public, if a conditional use goes into play, Mr. and Mrs. Dietz decide that they want to sell this. Does that conditional use go with them? Could this for always be residential? Please explain to the general public how that works.
So as our city attorney commented, a conditional use is like a rezoning in that you're giving the property some rights. However, in the circumstance of a conditional use, if the ownership changes, then that conditional use may be revisited. I will say, though, that usually once they've allowed to modify the building, we're usually fine with it. It just gives an opportunity to look again at parking in this circumstance is really what the condition is in there for. It's not residential use. It's really just to be sure that the site is being used as we expected. In some conditional uses, it would be about the commercial operation, and we would look at hours of operation, or again, their parking or lighting or something like that. So it's kind of a hybrid when you look at a conditional use. You're supposed to look at that site and evaluate each one of, for example, if we had 5 residential applications before you tonight, each one would have to be evaluated on its own merit because each site is to be reviewed and looked at independently. And so that's why we focused, while he owned some property adjacent, we focused just on the site because that's what we had the ability to say the parking was provided for.
And to clarify something that he said, it's 50%.
Yes, 50% of the
And
first
so
floor.
are we looking at the south 50%? So one parking spot, or does the whole building come into play on that?
So I think what he was trying to say is that if you voted to not approve his application, he would then have the right to make one unit still, okay, and the other be commercial, and he would not have to provide any off-street parking at all, okay? But by the virtue of going through a conditional use process in our C4 district, he's required then to have one parking space per residential unit, which means that in turn, he's actually has to provide and maintain that for parking.
Okay.
He couldn't come back. So let me say downtown, you can build wall to wall. He could not come back. He could not add on to the building and eliminate that parking. He has to maintain the parking.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does.
Thank you.
Any further discussion, or do I hear a motion? Mr. Mayor, Commissioner.
I would move to approve the ordinance granting a conditional use permit for 113 West 4th Street, and as the Planning Commission has also recommended.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded as such. Is there any discussion?
You know, I think one of the things I would say, yes, to a certain degree, there is a parking issue, but not necessarily caused by the 2 apartments we're adding tonight. or we may add tonight. I think it's balanced by the by the demand, I guess, for downtown housing and downtown activity. There are some really good things going on in the downtown, I think, right now. I think Mr. Braun alluded to 50, and I'm assuming you're including the 38 from Catacorner across the street from this, and that's exciting, but daunting also. But they have acquired the parking lot across from the property we're discussing tonight. So that'll help. I think we do have a challenge as a city with keeping our alleys traversable. But I think the need for residents wanting to live downtown and the need to restore and use our older buildings outweighs some of the challenges of the daytime parking. So that's why I'm proposing this motion to go forward.
Okay. Any further discussion? Further discussion? Okay. All right, at this time, hearing none, let's proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Wygand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Jorgensen?
And I vote yes, motion carries. Let's move on then to report by the city manager.
Commissioners, I don't have anything, but I'm going to let Mrs. Lee and Mr. Hayfley to take part of my time to give you an update on Legacy Square.
Okay.
You know, Rod, I looked at all those. I'll be sure to go look at it again tomorrow. I will look at it again tomorrow. Actually, and we did have a few weren't spelled right, and we've got those corrected. So I wanted to give you a quick update and take the opportunity to update the community as a whole. If they haven't driven down in the last week, there's been tremendous activity happening at Legacy Square. Today they began pouring asphalt in earnest, and they'll finish that up, and striping will be tomorrow. In addition to that, landscaping has really come along. There will be a section of it that will not be complete along the alley in time for opening this weekend, but it will be completed soon. The fence is anticipated to be removed tomorrow, and so we have Mike and I were over there for about 2 hours. No, we weren't really there for 2 hours, but we went back and forth a couple times today trying to work out all of the logistics of both the event that has been approved as well as reestablishing the two-way traffic, all of the parking, all of the signage, etc. So what we kind of wanted to make sure that the public knew was, 8 o'clock Friday morning is the ribbon cutting. Okay. The event on Friday night will be part of the setup for that event will actually begin tomorrow afternoon. And so the main central part of that parking lot will still be blocked off. The parking along the perimeter, First, Second, and Walnut, will be open and available once the fencing has gone down and the striping is fine. That we want to let the striping dry, but yeah, it'll be available. However, because of that event, that main part of the parking lot will be closed off. The concert begins at 6 p.m. and runs till 10 o'clock. Following the completion of that concert, there will be cleanup, removal of the barricades, because actually during that event what was approved was also the closing of Walnut in the 100 block, so from 2nd North, and also 1st Street from Walnut to Main. But at the conclusion of the event, all of those barricades will be removed. The street will be able to resume two-way traffic. Okay, the parking then after the event and all of that cleanup again, excluding that there's going to be some barricades and some bleachers and some other things in the parking lot. The parking lot will be able to be parked on for anybody who wants to go park at, I guess midnight by the time the cleanup's done, or anytime on Saturday. So we wanted to let you know that. However, and if you happen to see the city's Facebook, you'll also be aware that there will still be going on, as I said, some landscaping and some additional things over the next 2 weeks to finish up the remainder of Legacy Square. So there may be times when some spaces are blocked off. There could be somebody coming in to make another delivery of the trees, for example, the rock material, et cetera. That may require some of that. So there will still be some patience that we'd like to ask for, but certainly by the end of this weekend, we'll have a great new venue in play, and we've been over there multiple times to kind of just check through it, but we're happy to answer any questions.
I don't have anything to add. The big thing I wanted to highlight is the plan to restore traffic to two-way traffic after the event Friday night.
The fence comes down?
Fence comes down Thursday. So the one-way, though, will still be needed because we just don't have, we don't want to open it up for two-way, close it back down, and then open it back up. So we're kind of making it work as best we can.
And there will still be workers in there Friday.
Right.
In and out, so we still want to keep that limited as.
They were putting
for
sod down.
Sod down
irrigating it
today,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was looking nice.
Yeah, but the stage comes in, then the concert, the
Will the stage be
performing
in the parking lot?
The stage will be in the parking lot. And so we do want to, also just for the sake of the event, as I know that they are putting that out, while there are some seating going to be there for some of the sponsorship, et cetera, and then we're bringing in some bleachers, most people should be bringing their chairs. This is a big space, and there'll be a great ability to host a lot of people in it, but they will, unless they prefer to stand.
And
But get
now
to
you
bring their
didn't, you said there was going to be a concert, but you didn't say who was performing.
Travis Martin will be the performer that evening, and he.
And a free concert.
Yes, it's a free concert, although they're still taking donations. So, feel free to come down loaded with cash. Also, they'll have that truck raffle. The truck will be on display. There's 3 to 4 food trucks planning to come, so if people want to know about that. But of course, we have our other restaurants downtown, so feel free to eat any of those places before you come over as well. But there should be a great festival-like atmosphere going on there to really kick this off well. And I think Travis shared with us when he was here to kind of talk about how he wanted things set up, that he has had more interest in this concert than any he's had here, and he's had great success here, and he is thrilled to be the kickoff performer for this event. And we were thrilled to have him. Nice to have somebody from here be our first performer. So.
You bet.
Restroom's working.
Yes, and I don't know if you know this, we had a slight hiccup with some
Flush
handles.
valves.
Yeah.
Flush valves.
But I understand they've got all that resolved. It'll be open for
Did not
sure.
know that.
Yeah, that was
good.
that was late this afternoon. Like I said, every time we go over, there's one more question. But it's looking really good. And we're excited. And then coming on later, provided we raise the rest of the money, is the playground. So that would again, and then the work, as you recall, the grant work that would go on the north side of the street, which actually adds parking as well. So in the end, we come away with a net gain in parking.
Good.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Fantastic.
Richard, do you have anything more? Okay. This time we'll move on then to reports by city commissioners. Sarah?
None at this time.
Tom?
Don't have any.
Mike?
I just want to conclude, I really appreciate the process tonight. We want to thank Mr. Dietz and his family for investment in our community, and we appreciate the others coming to share your concerns. I think as a municipality, we're closest to our electorate, and I like that, so that we can have people come in and share their views, share their opinions. We love to have more other people come in and do that. So thank you all for coming and sharing, and hopefully we can all make our community a better place.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Move on to report by the mayor, and this is tonight was the second time that I heard about children sitting in the middle of the bike lanes riding with sidewalk chalk, which is concerning for me there on Walnut. I wonder if the planning commission could take a look at the position of those bike lanes, and we've had it there for 4 years in the present.
Does it have to be on the rail trail?
We had tremendous research
where the
about
rail
that
used
before,
to-
Commissioner
used to be.
Weigand.
We did, but I do know that Mike and I at one time also talked about putting up some additional signage about where pedestrians should be, okay? And or in this case, children, that there are sidewalks in a lot of these blocks. And we've been working, and particularly Public Works has worked to kind of make sure that some of the places that were maybe had bumps and were more difficult to push a stroller or something like that, that they've been removed. But we can look at that again. But
I think,
we talked about ensuring that that was directed to the outer corridor. But
And I've walked the street numerous times in the last several months, and particularly in that 300 block of Walnut, there's no sidewalk on the east side. There's a parking lot.
400 block and
The 400 block,
and-
I guess that's correct.
And we have talked about that as our gap, now that because at the time, 100 didn't have it either, now 100 does. So this is the remaining block, and maybe we could at least get with them and stripe off a sidewalk through there to kind of enhance and keep sure people understand that that's where we meant for pedestrians to be on the sidewalk.
And yeah, if there's, I mean, we've tried it for 4 years, and there's nothing keeping us from moving it at this time, is there?
No.
But perhaps we can take another look at it and see, and perhaps there's a parking solution there as well. So
It does look dangerous.
yeah. So all right. Well, thank you. At this time, I just have announcements to read. Legacy Square, as we heard, grand opening will be from 6 to 10 with the ribbon cutting at 8 o'clock in the morning, Friday morning. On the 9th, we'll have a study session at City Hall, followed by the following week on the 16th, and our next regularly scheduled meeting will be at 9:30 a.m. on September 18th. Is there anything further to come before this meeting? If not, we shall stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Our next regular schedule.